Hello, welcome to my tape. This tape was made specially for you, so don't share it with anyone. Today, we're going to be going over 4 different ways to appease the blood god. Everyone knows that the best way to spend a fortnight in solitude is to appease the blood god endlessly. Otherwise, if you didn't appease the blood god, well, we all know what would happen then, don't we? Yes, we must appease the blood god constantly and endlessly. And so, the first step to appeasing the blood god is to, of course, acquire a bloodstone. A bloodstone may be acquired in several different ways, the first of which is to go to a bloodstone quarry. This is a fairly dangerous method, of course, because, as we all know, the bloodstone quarries are home to several thousand bloodstone mirelurks. Bloodstone mirelurks are not to be fooled around with, because while normal mirelurks might be fairly easy to just shoot and kill, bloodstone mirelurks, well, their element is blood. I mean, they have nothing else to live for. All they do is master, it's like a swordsman mastering the art of the sword. They've mastered the art of blood, and unfortunately, you have quite a bit of blood. So a bloodstone quarry, if you are very confident in your fighting skills, then by all means, you may give yourself to the blood god. However, if you're looking to survive and appease the blood god, this first option is not quite so appealing. The second method is to go to an ancient monk that has gathered bloodstones from the bloodstone quarries or elsewise. These monks have learned how to appease the blood mirelurks, and they do not share this with anybody. The few times that they have tried to teach outsiders how to appease these blood mirelurks, it has never worked for anybody other than the monks. So, we do not try anymore. It is great if a monk does have one in stock and you can afford it, because they are quite expensive, as you could imagine, given the risk and the demand for them. So, if you can afford it and they're in stock, that's great, but it's very unlikely they're going to be in stock even if you can't afford it. Let's be real. Everybody knows that they must worship the blood god endlessly, and bloodstones do last a long time, but they do wear out, and so people are constantly needing them, and nobody really wants to go to the bloodstone quarries, right? So that second option, if it's available, great. Otherwise, the third option is the bloodstone caverns. You see, the bloodstone quarries tend to be very open, and that's where the bloodstone mirelurks tend to get in. The bloodstone caverns, on the other hand, are much more hidden and much more hazardous. And so, bloodstone mirelurks are generally not a problem. Of course, you will need to be very skilled at spelunking, and you'll probably need to go during the dry season, of course. As we all know, 11 months out of the year, the caverns in the local area fill with blood. So we're going to need to sync up with the dry season. Otherwise, you'll need some pretty specialist diving equipment. The blood that fills the mines is very rich in minerals that will eat away at pretty much any sort of metal or rubber, and so you need pure nylon, and it's very difficult to get a seal. It's very difficult to find equipment that works correctly, and even then, blood is so thick, it's kind of hard to move through once it gets all clotted, and the pressure can get pretty intense pretty fast. So it's better to just make sure you're only going during the dry season. If that's not an option for you, then you do have the fourth method. The fourth method of acquiring a bloodstone, which is by far the most difficult, but also the most rewarding, is to become a bloodstone yourself. This is very similar to the self-mummification techniques of monks of not only yesteryear, but today as well. So, the technique is as follows. Basically, what you do is you meditate daily on what it is like to be a bloodstone, maybe like the sort of social interactions a bloodstone would have with its relatives and its friends, what sort of legal system that the bloodstones would have, what sort of systemic prejudices and injustices might emerge in this bloodstone society. Just imagining, stuff like what a bloodstone's birthday looks like, what a bloodstone's 18th birthday looks like maybe, what a a Bloodstone's prom would look like. Now that might be interesting. It's just, you want to make sure that you're trying to understand all facets of Bloodstone life. And once you feel like you sort of are familiar with Bloodstone life, you want to start trying to cut off your connections with the outside world and focus more and more on becoming a Bloodstone in thought and eventually in physicality. So you're going to want to make sure that you're eating a lot of calcium, not drinking very much water, eating very low-fat foods. You're basically just trying to turn your body into like a stone. So that's basically the point. And you do have blood in you already, so when you turn into stone, it's a Bloodstone. And by this method, absolutely will appease, it'll appease the blood god for the rest of your life. So, that's good. It's a very solid method if you have the dedication for it. So, once you have a Bloodstone, those are the four real possible ways to get a Bloodstone. It's fairly easy to worship the blood god. You just have to make sure you slit your wrists every night, bleed all over it, make sure you get it nice and wet, and then pat yourself up, go to bed, right? And then just do that every night. Sometimes if you're doing something, if you really have like a big business transaction or a game, or maybe you like bet a bunch of money on a race or something, then I definitely would recommend doing it right before that. Ideally when you wake up, and then again right before just to replenish your luck. Now, I do want to warn you that you shouldn't do this too frequently, because if you just do this all the fucking time, the blood god will get annoyed with you. You don't want to be using the blood god. The blood god needs to be using you. That's the only way it's going to work. So I hope this was instructional, and I hope that this tape helps you out later on in your Bloodstone worship and keeps you from the wrath of the blood god. Thank you, and have a lovely day. Blood.